All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass.
Welcome to another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass. This is your host, John Curren. Today I have with me Dallisa Hocking. Hocking. No, I'm terrible at names, but she probably knew this because she is a fifth generation psychic medium, educator, in Consciousness Guide. I think it's pretty cool. I've been intrigued uh, by psychic mediums and the tarot cards and the readings and all that, horoscopes. All of those things I've been curious about all my life. So I'm really happy to have you here on the show. The Dallisa Hocking, welcome. Um,
Thank you.
Fifth generation psychic medium. So this is something that's been handed down in your family, then almost like a legacy. It
Yeah, it has. It was. It was not on what I thought I was going to do for a living. Like, I didn't set out on this pathway intentionally. It really found me in August of 2015. But yeah, I grew up in a family that was very open to all of this. My grandmother, Eloise, I've got some photos of her behind me. She would often talk about the full body apparitions that she would see walking through her house and who they were and what they were wearing. And she would talk to me about her ESP, her extrasensory perception, her downloads, her premonitions.
yeah.
And so those were really a big part of our conversations growing up. And I'm lucky that I had her because then when everything happened in 2015, I was definitely more prepared.
Yeah. So I mean, how so though? Tell me a little bit more about that, how you felt you were more prepared for that because of that. I've met people I mean, I think a lot of people have met people who have these extra senses. Um, I don't know if I have or not, but it seems to me like your core teachings, your core belief is that, we should stop seeking these external type of like readings and so forth and external sources. And maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but really bringing it inward. And I meditate, and I'm a firm believer that I found my inner peace through meditation. And I mean, I don't know how to describe it. There's a place in me that there's something I feel, and it has changed. And there's vibrations and frequency and all these things and spirits. I mean, I do believe in it. I'm really trying to better understand. So, how did that prepare you so your upbringing and how did that prepare you for 2015 now, you're saying?
Yeah, because I was a dating coach and a matchmaker when August of 2015 came around, and I was working at a business school in Texas. And I decided at the last minute, really, to fly up to New York and go to a workshop at a place called the Omega Institute, which is about 100 miles north of LaGuardia Airport to give people their bearings.
Hmm.
And the whole workshop was a weekend on synchronicity and how they'd basically proven this group through data and tracking that there were no accidents, that everything happened for a reason. And so how ironic, I go to this workshop and all these different synchronicities happen. We'd be here for 4 days if we were going to go through the whole list of everything that happened. But really, the pivotal moment came at the very end of that trip where I decided that a friend of mine who had a house, a second home, not too far from the Omega Institute, that I was going to go over there and catch up with him. I had known him previously from a work project in Las Vegas when I used to work there. And he said, "Yeah, come on over. Let's eat some dinner and we'll watch a movie." And so I stayed at his house the last night of my trip.
Yeah.
And, I thought everything was pretty normal. I was going to fly back the next day and back to my regularly scheduled life, except he gets a phone call while I'm at his house. and his family had called to let him know that his Aunt Barbara had died unexpectedly. She had fallen down a flight of
Oh
stairs.
my gosh.
And I felt so bad for my friend. And, I give him my condolences. It's pretty late at this point. So he goes upstairs. I go off to the guest bedroom. I get ready for bed and I fall asleep, except his Aunt Barbara, who I'd never seen, never spoken to, knew nothing about. I could see her in the dream state, the astral state, and I could see what she looked like. She did not move her mouth. She asked me, though, if I could tell her nephew that she was okay and that she made it to the other side. And so I wake up the next morning coming out of the fog of being asleep, and I knew immediately what had happened. And I walked out to the kitchen. I told my friend, "Here's what your Aunt Barbara said to me last night." And he asked what she looked like. I described her. He confirmed that it sounded very much like her. And then a couple of days later, once I was back in Texas, I was at lunch with a friend and I was telling her this whole incredible story. And I was reaching for my phone to show her photos from the trip
Yeah.
when I noticed that my friend had sent me a photo from his aunt's service that day. And my eyes started to fill with tears. It was exactly as
Oh
she
my
had looked
gosh.
just a couple of days
I
before
have
when she had,
chills over that,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah, it changed my whole life. I mean, really, I went back to Texas. I ended up dissolving the company that I had started and decided, well, shoot, if Aunt Barbara, who I never knew, could come through, what else is trying
Yeah,
to
right.
come through? So then I started a beta test and testing my gifts and abilities to see if I could bring forward more information on behalf of other people. And I did that, and it was incredibly successful to the point where I knew that this is my calling and what I was meant to do. And so I left Texas. I moved back to Las Vegas where I had family. And I thought, God, if my career as a psychic medium just completely crumbles, at least I'll have family. I'll have a place to take a
Yeah.
shower and get some food. And it did the opposite. It was off to the races. I over the course of years, I built a clientele in Las Vegas. I opened my own spiritual center there. I started my own live stage show where I did psychic readings from the audience at a hotel in Las Vegas. And then the pandemic hits and everything turned virtual. And so for the last 6 years, I've been operating a virtual company where everything is
Wow.
done online.
That is so, I mean, this is such an amazing story. Now, I've heard of other people saying the same thing. Like you you take a risk, you take this huge step forward, take a risk, and you're just looking to say, I just hope I can cover, put a roof over my head and food in my belly and just keep the basic necessities going, but I've got to do something. And then the results below are just so exponentially better. I mean, unbelievable. Like you could never imagine the way your life ended up. And it just came from opening that door and walking through it. Amazing. I was having chills as you're talking, but I have to share something that I've never shared with anyone online. And I've only actually shared with a few close friends, but it deals with when my father died. So back in 2013, um, my father had my father had ALS, and he was in the later stages of it. It took about 2.5 years for it to hit. He had a very aggressive type that started in his throat. It's called bulbar, and it takes away your ability to speak. And my dad, like myself, very talkative, except you could not get a word in with my dad. And my dad was very set in his mindset and how the world was. So in some ways, it was almost like karma coming in and say, no, you're not going to be able to talk. You have to listen. So it did humble my dad a lot and had close relationship with my dad. And I live in Virginia. He was down in Florida, and my mom and my sister took care of him, as he was had this disease and was dying. But the last week, I was able to come down, and as soon as I drove down, I basically I opened the door, and he starts taking me around the house, like giving me things. And I'm like, okay, let me settle down. But next thing I know, there's an ambulance there, and they're taking him to hospice. And he had it all planned out. He was going to go get an appointment with hospice to see if he was ready. He was ready to die. To die. Um, but so I took him on that ride, and spent the last week of his life with him in hospice, and was there when he passed. And that first night when I came back to my mom's house, couldn't go back into my old room because that's where he had been staying, and the sheets were all, they hadn't been changed or anything. It was really late. So I just slept out in the family room just by myself and just trying to fall asleep. And I could feel this sense, like I could feel this spiritual presence hovering over me. And I kind of got scared. And I thought to myself, and I knew it was my dad. I knew it was my dad, and I was like, would never want to harm me or anything, and I was like, I just got to accept it. And when I did, I could almost feel like this presence come in and enter my body, and I think a part of him stayed because my wife would mention that it became a little bit more like my dad after that. And in some ways, I do think that there's been an inner battle between myself and my dad's spirit. Um, it's kind of just kind of interesting. My dad and I were a lot alike, but we started, you know, bumping heads when I was 13 because we're so much alike. Um, he had I have the thumbs up and he had the thumbs down. And I have a picture of that somewhere. But I never told anyone that, and I would have never believed it had it not happened. Um, but I really do feel that, those things happen. And to hear you share your experience, it gives me courage to share mine because I know I'm not the only one. But it's like, it sounds kind of crazy, quite honestly. But
I love it. I love that you shared it. I love that you shared your story because I think when we talk more about it, my story, your story, it normalizes it because I think more people have had experiences like we've had, but they may not speak publicly about them or on a
yeah,
larger scale. Yeah.
well, I go a little bit deeper then. So I had a friend back in college. Her name was Kimberly Bergalis. She got AIDS from her dentist.
Oh,
She was
wow.
purposely infected by her dentist who had AIDS himself. And, back, I'm trying to think of what year this was. It was in the late 80s. And Kim actually made the front cover of People magazine because she spoke before Congress, and she's the reason why we have universal precautions. Because this dentist did not want people to think that AIDS was just a gay disease, that anyone could get it. So what did he do? He purposely infected about, I think, maybe a dozen patients, and Kim was
Ugh.
one of them. And she was just one of the most brightest souls, like brilliant souls, those people that you just want to be around. Just um, such a beautiful person, inside and out. And I mean, I actually had a big crush on her and I asked her out back in college, and she would never go out with me because she knew better. But but with Kim, um, there's that spirit of Kim as well. And I know I was going somewhere, and I got so sidetracked with Kimber Gallus and the AIDS story.
Did
But
you experience her coming in or did you have a dream with her or anything?
um, yes, It just affected our whole group. Um, and death and dying, it affects us all to some degree. And yeah, actually, so before Kim died, my group of friends, we all went down and met up with her, just kind of say our last goodbyes. And my friend, who has no filter, says to Kim, "So, have you seen a white light?" And he's asking her, and she did verify that. She's like, "Yeah, and I've seen the white light, and they've been saying it's not time yet for me to go." And it's like, and this kind of stuff, you just don't, you know, unless you've gone through it personally, you're gonna think it's just absolutely crazy. But I this is where I was trying to go. I just came back to me. So when Kim died, I was really I was mad. I was mad at God, quite honestly. Um, and I thought, how could God do this? Take away such a wonderful person from this world. She made this place, but I couldn't understand. I got very mad. And what I came to understand, and I had always felt like a presence in my life. But when that happened, all that kind of went away for a couple of years. I didn't feel that for a couple of years. And it took me some time to kind of process everything. And I came to the conclusion that, there's a much bigger picture here. Life isn't just about me or about any one person, but there's something bigger at work here. And um, we're not we're not able to really understand or comprehend a lot of, comprehend that, and that's okay. But just know that there is purpose, and that's what I led with Kim is she died young. She died a tragic death, and I would never want anyone to die, especially of AIDS. But she brought us universal precautions. She 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 spread a lot of, she did make this life better for all of us. But you couldn't see those things at the time. Um, and I'm thankful for that. But this is not about me, and I'm sorry to keep talking about
Oh no, I love these stories.
I probably
I
say
love
it all.
hearing these.
I, I probably say that each conversation. That's why I changed this from interviews to conversations because
Yeah.
I enjoy talking to people and hearing your story. And um, you know, you talk about developing, using your own intuition and developing trust in yourself. Um, and I mean, I took from your website and things that I was looking at that, it's that helps you navigate life. It helps you make a bigger life. So how do you, like, some people will say, my intuition's wrong, so wrong. I just need to do the opposite. I think there was a Seinfeld episode about that. You're doing everything wrong, so just do the opposite and you'll start doing everything right. But is that fair, or is that, I mean, tell me more about intuition and your approach.
Yeah, I think we all have these gifts and abilities. I think I was born with a stronger antenna to be able to tune into the higher frequencies more naturally and easily. But I have psychic development students that live all over the world. And I do feel like it comes down to our own vibration, our own frequency. And there's different things that we can do that lifts our frequency and gets us more aligned with the frequency match that we need to be at in order to bring forward psychic or intuitive information. So I think we all have it. A lot of us may understand a few simple examples, like if you're thinking about someone and they end up calling you or texting you, or you get an email from them and you think, gosh, I was just thinking about
Yeah.
them. That's that wavelength, like you're tuned into that same frequency. And so you can feel that in advance. Or if you're getting ready to go leave for work in the morning and you just feel like you got to take a different road to get there. Just
Hmm.
feels like there's something not quite right. And so you decide you're going to take a detour and go down a different road. And you find out later that there was a big accident, car accident on the route you normally take. Those are all examples of these hunches that are intuition. You can sharpen that and go more into, psychic awareness, which is, for example, you could ask a question of the universe or to spirit guides or angels or a loved one on the other side. And from that specific question, you can get answers, you can get a response. You can do it through a written channeling, or you can speak it aloud and do like a verbal channeling. And all it is really is adjusting your frequency in order to get psychic information like that, where you ask a question and get answers back. You've got to raise your frequency even higher than what it normally takes to get everyday intuition. And then if you want to do mediumship, which is connecting with a person or an animal on the other side that has passed away, that's getting your frequency even higher. And so most psychics will get information and ask questions and predict the future. But when you get up to the mediumship level, those are more rare because it takes a while to work that muscle and get that frequency high
Mm.
enough to be able to sustain that, because mediumship can be really heavy. It's for me, when I do mediumship, it's like putting my finger in a light socket and getting electrocuted.
Really?
And it takes a good amount of time afterwards to bring myself all the way back into my body and feel grounded again and be able to even go to sleep, that night.
Yeah.
So it's a whole energetic experience.
Yeah, I mean, I can, the way I would relate to that is just through doing my podcasts. I get an energy from it, and I get so uplifted after, by the time the interview's done or the conversation's done. I mean, I can't just settle down. And I hear that too about a lot of people, like a lot of like rock stars will talk about that. You get such an energy and like the feeding off of the audience. Now we don't have an audience around us here, but I there is absolute freak vibration, and I mean it's weird, it's strange. I've been watching, so I'm on YouTube, and I've been watching some of the some of the mediums and channelers, and I just find it so interesting. It's like, if this message finds you, then it's meant, meant. And honestly, I'm a little incredulous. I don't know. It just seems like I'm not meeting that person directly. It is by chance, or it's in the algorithm that, I'm interested in this stuff. So I'm not too,
I don't watch those videos.
yeah, I mean, I
I
think
think they're
it's
kind
kind
of
of interesting.
bogus.
I think kind of interesting, but and sometimes they'll like they hit like boom, 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 and then something, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's not me. But what is interesting, and you mentioned it, pets. So, I never, I always heard that, or in like in Catholic religion, they say pets don't have souls. But I never really believed that. Every dog that I've had that like a great relationship with, like the best animals I've had, they are their own person. And when I was watching the tarot, just reading recently, and it was really connecting. Someone said it's your pet is trying to reach out. And I had lost my dog. We put our dog down about a year ago. And I'm thinking, oh man, Phineas is trying to reach, he's trying to talk to me. But again, it's easy to think that and to be brought into it. And maybe it is true. I don't really know. But it is looking to external sources And what I found through meditation and everything and going inward is that I need to shut down these external sources, because that's what's causing me all the stress and all the um, concern that I have. Um, I mean, that's what really got me started in meditation. Just I needed to develop a thicker skin, and to protect my soft, gooey inside. And I'll share with the audience too that um, when I was talking to Delisa about this show, I was talking about my gut intuition, my gut intuition, and I said I should have a six pack the way have my my gut intuition and my gut feelings and everything to do with my gut. I'm working my gut like crazy, but no six pack.
I don't have one either, and I do this for a living. So, uh, yeah, but yeah, animals continue on their energy, and they have come through many, many times over the last,
Yeah.
almost 11 years I've been doing this. And I've had experiences with animals that have passed away that come through. And I remember I was on stage one night in Las Vegas, and it was like the night that all the animals wanted to come. And I remember standing there and seeing like a little dog in spirit at the edge of the stage. I had birds, I had all different
Wow.
kinds of animals come through. And the dog, it was interesting because the small dog, I was describing it, and there was somebody literally in the audience sitting directly across from where I could see this dog in spirit. And it was her dog that she had that had passed away. So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it's incredible.
So
And they're
when you first saw these vision, the first one was you were dreaming, but now you're talking about you're actually on stage and seeing this. Wow. How do you separate the two? Can you? Or
my yeah, my antenna for tuning in is really a frequency match. So I have to be intentional when I want to connect and get information for a client, or if I'm teaching a class or if I'm on stage. And when I'm not working, I really don't get a lot of downloads because I don't want to. I don't want to be
okay.
bombarded 24/7. Most information comes through when I'm in my office doing work, and really I come in a little bit here and there. Like for example, I had premonitions of crimes before they were happening, and all three of those happened while I was awake and not working. I can tell you those stories real quick if you
Yeah,
want.
go.
They're
I'd love to
interesting.
hear that. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So I've always been fascinated by crime and just the psychology of it. When I was in high school, I even was on the mock trial team, and I thought, gosh, it'd be so interesting to be a trial attorney. So I've always been interested in it, and I
Mm-hmm.
have a close family member that's a homicide sergeant. And oh gosh, the first thing that happened was I needed a cashier's check, and it was a Friday afternoon, and I was moving, and I had to go and get it before the bank closed. And it's right at the edge of when it was going to be too late, and I had to go turn it into the apartment complex I was moving into. And I go to the bank and I pull my car in, and I remember just sitting there for a few moments because something felt really off. And I started because I see, I hear, I feel like I have all the psychic gifts, which can be quite interesting. So I'm sitting there and I feel like I'm almost in a twilight zone, like in between kind of dimension. But I get this sense of a robbery. And I thought, oh my God, I have to get this cashier's check. And and then I saw like what looked like this figure of a man, but it didn't look like it was in real time. It looked like I was watching a glimpse of a different time lapse
Hmm.
almost. It was very strange. So I see this man walk in front of my car, and I'm parked right in front of the ATM machine, but I don't see him like continue on. He like kind of like drifts off. And I thought, okay, well, I don't see this guy anymore. I'm going to go in. Go in the bank. I hurry up, I get the cashier's check, I get in my car and I zoom off. And it was probably about a half hour or so later. My parents send me a group text message. And they said, whatever you do, don't go to the bank by your house.
Oh my
There was
gosh.
a robbery that just happened. And it's wild. So my car was in front of the ATM machine. There was a man who had watched a woman go to the ATM machine and then held her at gunpoint. She had a baby with her, and he held the baby and the woman at gunpoint.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I got that right before it happened. The next thing was on Halloween one year. I My mom said, "Do you want to go to the grocery store with me?" And I normally didn't do that, but I was like, "Yeah, sure, what the heck?" So
Yeah.
go to the grocery store with her. We're walking around, and I start getting a really strange feeling in the grocery store. And it's almost like your spidey sense starts going off, like your palms might start kind
Yeah.
of getting sweaty, or you're licking your lips a bit more. So I get deeper into the store with her, and we're towards the back of the store. And I start getting this psychic awareness, almost like I'm in a different dimension, reality. But I could start seeing and sensing these people running out of the back of the store and exiting out of the back exit. And so I start kind of acting a little strange because I'm like, oh no, I know this
Not
feeling.
again.
Yeah. And my mom, who knows about all my gifts, she said, what's going on? I said, well, this is what I'm just seeing with the people running out of the back of the store. And she goes, oh my God. So she goes, I just have to get one more thing. So, of course, right? It's famous last words. So we go to the another aisle. We hurry up. We get the lemonade that she needed to buy for my dad. And when we're standing in that aisle, I could hear two men fighting. And I turned to her and I said, do you hear those men? And she goes, no, you're really starting to freak me out. I said, well, let's hurry up then. So
Yeah.
we have to bag our own groceries at the store. So we're hurrying and hurrying and hurrying. We get the receipt and we dash out of the store, right? So again, we get back to the car, everything's fine. Till the next morning when my mom goes to get her hair done, talk about like how things are so synchronized. So she goes and gets her hair done, and a woman says to her, hey, did you hear about what happened at the store yesterday? And of course, my mom's like, what?
What?
What store? What happened? Because, she's
Yeah.
remembering everything that just happened. And what ended up happening is it was the store down the street from the one that I was at. And we had the timestamp on the receipt from the store. So we knew that it was
Yeah.
happening at, the same time. What was going on where there were two men who got in a fight, and the fight started out in front of the store. One guy had a gun, and he followed the other guy into the store, and everyone sees this guy with a gun, and they start running, and they go to the back of the store and leave the exit out of the back of the store.
Right.
So I was getting it as something that was happening nearby, but because I was in a store, I think it had like the same kind of frame of reference.
Hmm.
um, and then the third thing is a short one. I was traveling by myself, and I was at an Airbnb, and I'm reading a book, laying in bed that night, getting ready to go to sleep. And I hear from what I call my spirit team, angels and guides and ancestors, I hear, where is your stun gun? And I look and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, it's over there. I see it. And then I hear, because you're going to have a break in tonight.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
like, oh my God. I don't know how I fell asleep, but I did. Fell asleep. And a couple of hours later, wouldn't you know, a man comes through the front entrance of the Airbnb that I was staying at. I shot so fast out of that bed and screamed, and he actually ran off. And so that's time stamped. You have it,
Oh
the
my
Airbnb
gosh.
message,
Yeah.
because I sent a message to the Airbnb host saying I was going to call the cops. And of course, he talked me out of it. But yeah, because he obviously didn't want his Airbnb
No.
involved in
That
something like that.
is crazy.
Yeah. So, and I'm actually getting ready to launch a project that has to do with things like that and our psychic abilities. And so I'll be launching that this summer.
Yeah. So this is something you've been developing just over time, and you've been helping others now develop their abilities. That must just, I mean, that's crazy. I don't know. That sounds cool. I mean, crazy
It's
cool.
fun. Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be people that are going to wonder, like, well, how do I raise my frequency?
Yeah.
And really, if you were to go to a doctor and you were like, hey, how can I live a healthier lifestyle? It's probably going to be a lot of the same answers. So it's going to be things like eating more organic fruits and vegetables, whole foods, drinking more water, being hydrated, connecting with nature, getting good sleep, all of
Yeah.
those things raise your frequency. But you brought up meditation a few times. And I always ask my students to meditate. And even if it's once a week, if that's all you can fit in, do it once a week. But it should be a regular part of your development because meditation, I have found, is the quickest gateway to opening up your intuition and setting the intention that you want your intuition to get stronger because you get to be right. What I mean by that is if you believe that you can connect and you have an intuition and you can get nudges, that intention is so powerful that you will actually start
Yeah.
having more downloads and nudges. So you have to believe it. A lot of my students get stuck because they don't think they can, or they don't think that the universe would be speaking to them. Why would they be getting
Mm-hmm.
information? But we all get information. It's just whether or not we're willing to lean into it and to listen to it.
You know, thinking about what your life must be like, uh, getting all these signals and it coming in, getting all this information coming in at certain times. And as you said, you've kind of trained yourself to say, I don't want to be bothered with this outside of the, I think you'd go absolutely nuts if you couldn't turn that off. Um, and that's what I think that's what I learned in meditation is um, thoughts have, I look at them as having a purpose. They're not necessarily, can't necessarily control them. They're going on in the background or of your mind or whatever. But they generally intend to be helpful, I think, or solve a problem is the way I look at it. But we have these recurring thoughts, and some of them get really bothersome, and some are like, the hell might, they regardless of the thought, positive or negative, still has energy with it. And you can decide where to place your energy. And I think meditation has taught me how to kind of sweep aside the energy that I don't want and kind of get it out, kind of escort it out of my mind because otherwise it's just going to bounce around in my head and not go anywhere. Um, I think people think that they don't have control or it's
Mm.
too hard. Like, you want me to like turn off my thoughts. And no, it's not that at all. It's getting your thoughts, I mean, they're backed up. They're not flowing. And you need to train yourself and get them to flow. Or turn them off when, it's like you need some downtime. You need yeah, I think it's such kind of a choice, honestly. Um,
Yeah, I do too. I think when I'm meditating, I think of it like a cloud above my head. And so when the thought comes in, it's in the cloud, I just let the cloud keep passing by rather than hooking into it.
yeah.
There's also practice that I think is really helpful if you're one of the people
Oh,
that get lots of loops in your head and you're wondering, well, how can I quiet those down or release them? I love what you were just saying about meditation. It's not about quieting them, it's about just letting them flow past instead of locking into them and getting hooked into them. And so there's a practice in a book called The Artist's Way, and the author is Julia Cameron. And the practice is called morning pages. Morning, morning, just like I'm getting up
okay.
in the morning. And it's really easy. It's three blank pages and a pen, and there's
Hmm.
no prompt. And you literally fill all three pages, and you're not done until the three pages are filled. And I will tell you, it has been the most transformative, writing experience. I think if you want to work with journaling prompts, the right question on the right day can
Mm-hmm.
unlock a lot of information. But if you just feel like my brain has a mind of its own, or I feel like I can't get out of my own way, or I can't figure out why this relationship or this job is not what I'm looking for, I
Mm-hmm.
just feel kind of stuck in my own life. I would do morning pages every single morning, 3 blank pages. And I think if you stuck with it for a while, you would feel a new level of liberation that you probably have never had before.
Is that like almost like a brain dump that you're doing? You're just writing whatever
Just
comes to
right.
mind?
Yeah. And if you wanted to write one affirmation over and over and over again
Okay.
until it fills 3 pages, you could do that. I have found it most helpful just to start somewhere. So it could be that I'm describing what I did the day before and I'm letting that story unfold. And then what I
Hmm.
notice has happened is maybe it's, I was volunteering at the animal shelter yesterday. And then I ran into a woman in the hallway of the animal shelter. And then we had a conversation about da 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 da
Mm-hmm.
da. And so it just keeps going.
Okay.
But I would write about what you're going through in life, things you're trying to sort out, and just getting them on paper without judgment. Oh my gosh, it feels like an invitation to total freedom.
Wow, that does sound really powerful. I am gonna try that. I wanted to mention too, though, that in my meditation, I really became aware of the mind-body connection too. Oftentimes, especially as you get older, we get aches and pains, and I mean, we move the wrong way, and we get hurt, or we trip on the stairs or I mean, just it's things that require coordination or effort will start to mess up or degrade over time. But meditation, I find restores that. It could be too that I do martial arts and I'm doing stretching too, and that also is strengthening the mind-body connection, teaching my body how to move a certain way. Uh, but I think as far as like transformation and personal growth, starting inside and just dealing with the way you feel, sitting there in silence for 5 minutes and listen to your body, it can show you a lot. It can show you a lot, and it is a journey. I do it daily. It's a practice. I do it every day for about 20 minutes. But sometimes I do it at night or during the day. Uh, it all depends, but it keeps me rock solid, I think.
No, I
No,
agree. I think that we can also go into our mind and rewire the way that our body works because I believe personally that things that are happening physically in the body, like different diseases, you shared it,
yes,
with your dad and his throat and ALS and that he was being shown how to listen. Um, that's a big part of when I talk about the body and emotions and healing ourselves because I do think the mind is very, very powerful and it takes direction on what
yes,
we believe. And so if we believe that we're healthy and we're healing and we can see that in our mind's eye, then I think that that's a big step towards healing. If somebody's going through something physically right now, there's a great book called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And there's a whole dictionary in there. And you can look up body parts or ailments, and it tells you, based on her spiritual work, what she thinks the
hmm,
disease or the body part originates from,
yeah,
and what it's connected into, and an affirmation that you can use to help heal that. But for example, I've noticed through years and years of doing this healing work that somebody that has an autoimmune disease, for example, I've noticed energetically it usually ties to a lack of self love or a lack of self worth. And the autoimmune comes in to hopefully get them to love themselves through
hmm,
and through once and for all. And so self-love can be a part of the recipe of the healing
Yeah.
because the person feels worthy to be alive and to be healthy. And so there's a lot of emotional dynamics that go into what the body is manifesting.
Yeah, no, so this podcast is about creating positive change in your life. That's what created it. And a lot of people just don't even know where to start. But I think the best place to start is inside. I mean, the way I think about it is that, and we've talked about this. There's so many things going on. There's so much information going on in the physical world, and now, I mean, they're on top of it, the spiritual world. And if it's a different frequency, like, I mean, I've heard it explained like spirits are all around us, and almost like on a different. Some people don't even like leave the earth. They're still here. They're next to us. Our ancestors. I mean, my name is a legacy. It's been handed out down over 200 years, and I handed it down to my son as well. So I've continued it. And so ancestry is really big in my life, and I just love I have felt that. I have felt closer to myself by learning who my ancestors were. It explains a lot. Like I come from a very strong lot of people. They were pioneers and settlers. Uh, you know, sh and out in the marine on the ship. And traveling around the world. It's cool. You get to. I think you understand yourself better when you understand your ancestors. And now I understand that they're behind me and they're kind of helping me along. Um, and I think a lot of our problems today do stem from over generations. Like your skills, and intuition have developed and been kind of this been passed along generation after generation. And maybe even lost where it came from. It's just a part of who you are. I think we all have that to some degree. And when we start to get back in touch with that, all sorts of wild things happen that you would never imagine. I mean, learning about myself and I don't know, there's just such a lot of good that comes out of it, I think. But starting somewhere. So the deeper you can go, I guess, the better. Um, where else can we, what else can we talk about this? Because this is really interesting. I think we
I
are
know
running on
there's so many rabbit holes to go down. Um, what came up when you were just what I was hearing psychically as you were talking about ancestors and our lineage and where we've been and where we are
yeah.
now. There are some people that I've come across over the years that get angry when I talk about like the families that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a bit controversial, but I've really done a lot of work over the years about not being a victim of my own life. And I've had people argue with me like, oh, I would never want the family that I've been in because they've done this and this and this to me and I've had a horrible life and like
Mm-hmm.
all these different things. But one of the biggest spiritual gifts I think I've really leaned into is that everyone that we've come across in our life, and yes, especially the people that are really difficult or the people that we feel didn't love us or didn't show love in the way we needed them to, that those are actually the biggest teachers we have here on Earth School. And if we can challenge ourselves to think about each and every person that we've crossed paths with, including the ones that may be in our own immediate family that we have trouble
Yeah.
with, if we could see that as, hmm, if they're a teacher for me in this lifetime, if I'm going to learn something important about myself, my own journey, my soul, why I came to earth through this teacher, what could I sense and see as the lessons that I was supposed to learn with that? Because, for example, if it's somebody listening that had a really tough relationship with their father and they felt like they could never speak up, they felt like, their father was always pushing them down or pushing them aside, you could go into victim mode and say, oh, well, I didn't like my dad. He was horrible.
Yeah.
Like I never got to be myself. Or you can say, if I think about this as souls having connections here on earth and from the other side, and my dad is a teacher for me in this lifetime, maybe through him, one of the lessons is that I am worthy of speaking up, that I am worthy of sharing my voice, that I'm worthy of bringing myself out on a bigger platform, if that's what you feel
Yeah.
inside. So it's trying to see each relationship, especially the difficult ones, through a lens of what was I supposed to learn here?
Yeah, that's interesting too. I've heard that about when you meet people, like when people come into your life, come in and out of your life, it's because you really haven't learned something from them that you needed to. I know from my own perspective too. I've learned what not to do from my dad. I mean, from challenging people, yes. They're challenging. That's why they're challenging. It's difficult. Um, and sometimes you learn what you're supposed to do, and sometimes you learn what you're not supposed to do. But um, it's all for you to decide. And yeah, I think it's absolutely true. But if you decide that it's bad, and you can make a choice to break that generational, like, I mean, look at like I'll just use I shouldn't use my own parents as an example, but they 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 were married, I guess almost 50 years. No, over 50 years. Um, and my dad was not true to my mom since they were since newlyweds, but they stuck together through all those times, even though there were moments where divorce was mentioned. That never happened. They stayed together for us kids. Um, but was that the right thing for them to do? They should have split a long time ago, and they didn't. And it's true along like I'm Irish Catholic, so you'll see that around Catholics. Like there was this fa friend of the family. They were married, but they lived in separate houses. They had completely different lives. They dated everything. Like, I mean, but that's the way that things were done. And there are a lot of things, examples that you could give up. The way things were done in the past is not necessarily the way things should be done in the future. Um, the world continues to change, and we must adapt or, I guess suffer the consequences, whatever that would be.
Yeah. Yeah. We're here to learn. And I think that we're the captain of our own ship, our own life. And if we change our minds, we change our lives because what we tell ourselves becomes the story of our reality.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And if you keep telling yourself that you can't do things, well, guess what? You're not going to be able to do them. It's not going to work.
Yes. Change your mind.
Yeah. So how can we probably should start wrapping this up. I value your time and want to respect it. So how can people best get in touch with you and any kind of, I guess, final comments you want to give to the listeners?
Yeah, I actually have a 10-minute free audio reset file that anybody can grab on my website and they can download it to their own device. And so that's a really good 10-minute audio file that's anybody that's meditating or wants to get into it. So they can go grab that now over on the website. My Substack is over there. Um, Classes that I have, sessions, like all the things. And
Okay.
so it's over at spiritandspark.com, all spelled out. And yeah, I'd love to connect with your audience there. And let's see, what do I want to leave as my parting words? Yeah, it's going to be a Rumi quote, and I've circulated this on my website over the years. And Rumi the poet, and the quote says, "Live life as if everything is rigged in your favor." And I think that speaks to what we've been discussing today about being the captain of your own ship and seeing the good that is out there and not being a victim of our own circumstances, and that everything, even the hardest things that we go through, there's always going to be some kind of lesson or silver lining in there. And it's all getting us to grow and evolve as souls and as loving beings here on earth.
Yes. You know, what's so amazing is I love boats, and you were talking right in my term, captain of your ship. I Dallisa, I really, really enjoyed having you on the show. This time has just flown by, and you offer such great information for for the listeners and for myself too. Really gets me thinking, and that's what a swift kick in the ass is all about. It's about, you know, it's about motivating yourself in a positive direction. And I really appreciate your time and everything that you've offered for the listeners. So
Thank you, John.
thank
It was
you.
delightful.
And to my listeners, please, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Keep coming back for more and more. Visit me at a swiftkickinass.com. Like, subscribe, tell all your friends, share with your ancestors that this is something to listen to. Uh, but I hope this helped you. And until the next time, I'm out of here. Peace. Hope you got your ass moving. Until then, until the next time, I'm out of here. Peace.